Well, hello again. We're going to start out by doing a little more troubleshooting. I need to know why this 5U4 rectifier tube is not lighting up. It's a 5-volt filament, and I said in the last video as I checked the pins, the filament does show continuity. So let's take our multimeter, stick it in the socket, and see what we get. Pins 2 and 8. Alright, I've just got them stuck down in there in tubes on tube socket pins 2 and 8. Let's see what we get. I've got the unit on. 0 volts. You know, now how does that happen? I mean, last night it was lighting up perfectly. This morning I turned it on. 0 volts. Alright, we're going to have to take it apart. Fortunately, it's this first one. I don't have to drag this out, unplug all those plugs and everything. Just a couple of plugs and it's out. I pulled all the tubes. It's always a good idea to do that when you have this many and you're going to be tipping up the chassis, because they will get bent over and your pins will get bent and your sockets could get broken. It's a lot cheaper to take a tube out and put it in than it is to buy brand new sockets or brand new tubes and then have to go through all that crap of taking the sockets out, putting the new ones in, pull the tubes. You know, you can put them back in real quick like. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean all the pins on the bottom of this tube socket. Not just the two we're concerned with. We're going to clean them all. This is a great opportunity to give them a double good scrub. They've already been cleaned once, but maybe I didn't do well enough. I don't know. I think we've got a solder problem. Another one. We shall see. I'll tell you what, this old solder, you know, just because it was soldered at the factory doesn't mean it was good. And they do change over the years. Take your time cleaning it up. We're getting ready to give a good multimeter connection here. That's what I want. I want a good multimeter connection. We need to find out whether or not this wire here, which is the filament wire for the rectifier, and this wire here, which is also the filament for the rectifier, they both go into the power transformer. We need to find out if we have continuity. So let's find out. Let's go to pin number 2. And I'm sorry, that's not pin number 2. Pin number 2 is over here. I'm going to go over here to pin number 2. And we'll go to pin number 8. And I'll connect it. You watch the meter. Here we go. Come here. There, we're getting 0.4 ohms on the 200 scale. I'd say that we have a good winding. Let's go ahead and disconnect the wire. Back to that. Reconnect. That's what we got. So I'd say the winding is good. Let's retouch the solder joints on that thing. Now those two solder joints are probably good. I'm sure they are. Otherwise I wouldn't have got a reading back to the power transformer. However, I'm still going to touch them up. Just to be on the safe side. I don't want to keep dragging this thing in and out every time I turn around. Alright, everything's been touched up, looking a lot better, cleaned up. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the chassis over and try to tighten these pins up from the other side, so when the tube goes in it makes better contact. I'll also re-clean them before I do that. The old pipe cleaner and alcohol trick is being applied. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time cleaning these things. This would be like the 5th time I think I've done it. At 91% alcohol again. I may go around this thing 3 times before I decide it's super clean. Then I'll show you how to tighten up those tube pins on this particular type of socket. Can't tighten them up from the bottom. You can only do it from the top. But you got to be very careful. Alright, they should be very clean, but just in case, I'm also going to give them a little spray with a QD electronic cleaner here. If I can get over here. There we go. They're nice and shiny down in there. Now sometimes what happens is when you push a tube into a tube socket, if it's an old tube socket, the pin on the tube actually pushes the pin on the tube socket down. Instead of going into the middle, it pushes it down and you really don't have good contact on it. I've had that happen a lot. A couple of times I've actually taken a little bit of JB weld and put on the bottom side of the tube socket to hold the pin in place, because I didn't want to replace the entire socket. Just put a couple dabs of JB Quick there, let it dry. If you see the pin is going down and coming out the bottom of the socket, just put a little JB Quick around it, just enough to hold it. It'll dry, and then you'll be okay after that. You can only use that trick usually once. Alright, just to make sure everything is good to go, I want everything dried up as much as I can. A little shot of air. I'll also hit it on the bottom with a little air too. Keep that air around. It always comes in handy. Here's how we tighten up tube socket pins with a jeweler's screwdriver. A little tiny one. Has to be very tiny, okay? Down in here you'll notice that there's a little bit of a space there. Between this thing goes around and the two ends come together, but there's a space there. Let me get the flashlight here. Maybe that'll help you see it a little bit better. Yeah, see the space? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the screwdriver on the top of that thing. I'm going to put it up there. There's a notch on each side of this thing. One here and one there. I'm going to put the screwdriver up there. Get it down there. I'm going to put the flat side. I'm not going to try to wedge it in real tight. I'm just going to get it down in there between the socket pin and the socket phenolic in this case. Then I'm just going to take it and move it in that direction, which essentially will close that pin up. Okay, I may have to go back and do it from the other side. Sometimes you have to do it 2 or 3 times back and forth until you get the pin closed up pretty darn close. So we'll just go ahead and you can feel it moving a little bit. Now this is not something you guerrilla. You just gently do it and you take a look at it, see how well it did. Alright, that closed up pretty good. Did you see there? She closed up pretty darn good. Now I'm going to do that all the way around. Remember, one side, sometimes you have to do one side, then the other, back and forth 2 or 3 times before it'll actually close up to where the pin will make good contact. But it's something you have to really finesse your way around, okay? You can see that pin 8, just to the left of that notch, is pretty far apart. Pin 8 is one of our filament connectors. The one directly to the left of it, and to the left of it, and to the left of it, I've got them pretty well tight. That pin 8 is pretty far apart. I'm going to keep working my way around. She's back in and turned on. Still no voltage. Let me wiggle the probes around a little bit. No voltage. We're on the AC scale here, by the way. Let's go down to 2 volts, see what happens, if anything. You're supposed to have 5 volts here. Look at there. This is not good at all. I went ahead and disconnected the 2 wires from pin 2 and 8, 2 and 8 from the bottom of the 5U4 socket, and I stripped them back a little bit. I cut off the bad ends, stripped them back, and we're going to take a reading of that transformer winding not connected to the socket. I'm going to use the old fluke, and I've got the 2 leads connected together. This is the reading we're getting on the fluke. So let's go ahead and disconnect them and hook them to the transformer wires. Well, that's what we're getting. How about them apples, huh? Let me make sure everything is still connected here. I don't know. Let me try hooking one side of this thing to ground and see what I get. That's an open. I don't know, unless that's a very low resistance winding. I don't know what to think about this. Alright, what I've decided to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect these gator wires, leave them where they're at, hook them up real good and tape them off to where they're well insulated. Then I'm going to leave them hanging out from underneath this chassis. And we're going to plug this chassis into the tormat and see what kind of voltage reading we get when we turn on the switch. Same thing we did last time. Well, the Seeburg boys must have known that at some point in the future, John from Arkansas would be doing this, because they made this nice little notch in the side of the chassis. Well, nice of them to do that. I can just run my wires right through there. Cool, huh? Alright, we're ready to rock and roll here. Now, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to call it a day after this measurement is taken and go in and get something to eat. Kind of relax the rest of the evening. So here goes. Keep your eye on it, folks. Keep your eye on it. Well, there you go. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Okay, I'd say that there's something wrong with that winding. Just not good, that's all. I'll tell you what, before heading to the house, we'll take one more reading. Now, we know that we're not getting any filament voltage out of this winding right here. I wonder if we're getting any plate voltage. Let's go ahead and test our plate voltage. See what we're getting here across these two. There we go, pins 4 and 6. And that's what we're getting. We're not even getting a volt, about a half a volt, I guess. I think we've got a screwed up transformer, people. No doubt about it. I just received a comment to our last video from a fella named Harry Hall. Harry Hall said, John, the reason you're not getting your 5U4 rectifier tube lighted and you're not getting any voltage there is because your service switch is in the wrong position. And I'm thinking, what? You know, this book over here that I spent $30-some on has been very helpful. However, it doesn't say anything about that. So I went over here to my service switch when I immediately came out to the shop. Immediately. And here's our service switch, and he's right. It is not in the spring-loaded position. It needs to come over here like that and get the turntable turning. Once the turntable turns, then the rectifier, according to Harry, comes online. He said it's not online all the time. It only comes online and lights up when the turntable's turning. Well, we're about to find out, because I'm going to tack solder these two wires back to that tube socket. Now, if this works, he will have saved me a ton of money and, most of all, a ton of time. The transformer is tack soldered back up to the socket, and we're going to go ahead and turn the switch on. The only tube I have in here is the 5U4. Don't need all the rest. The 5U4 has that separate winding for the filament. Now you see that this is not turning. Let's turn this switch on. We're going to hit this service switch down here. We're going to move it to the right toward that black switch right there, and then we're going to turn on our turntable. This starts moving. Let's see what happens. Oh, I'll be a son of a gun. Look at that. Look at that. There is nothing wrong. Nothing at all. I spent all day in this shop fiddle farting around with this thing, not realizing that that's the way it worked. But you know, it makes sense now as you think about it. Imagine this jukebox sitting in a bar or sitting somewhere all day long with the amplifier on. It's not needed if there's no records being played. So, guy drops in a coin, the turntable starts, the rectifier fires up, and you're good to go. And then as soon as the record stops, I imagine it after, I guess, a time period goes by and it shuts down. Isn't that amazing? Look at there. Well, I'll tell you what, Harry Hall, thank you very much. You are one lifesaver. Now, I told you that if this works, I owed you a banana split. You contact me, and I will arrange for you to get a banana split at the place of your choice. Thanks a lot. Okay, guys, did we all learn something today? Yes, we did. Look at those glowing filaments. Isn't that wonderful? And I know that Brendan is very happy about this too, because we were already looking at replacement transformers. I couldn't understand how it could work tonight and not work tomorrow. You know, it's just, it does happen. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I've checked everything, and it ate my craw that happened. Thanks again, Harry. I'll tell you what, I'm so happy. I'm just going to call this video complete. Until next time, this is John.